That's new. Oh, okay. So now it's streaming. Oh, I haven't had a delay like that in quite a while. I wonder what the problem is. Maybe we're going to have like a 45-second old school delay between when I'm talking and when everybody else hears it. Either way, we'll tell the world about it. Streaming game dev, doing machinery stuff, I think. And then we'll say the same thing, but for a different social media platform. All right. So in the last episode, we did a variety of things. We cleaned up a little bit here and there, and we ended up creating some better fog and some stuff like that. It still doesn't look proper, but a big part of why it doesn't look proper is because we don't have any silt. So because we don't have any silt, it really has a strange flat look. But if we add in some silt, it should be fine. So to put in silt, we can go up into the prefabs, level bits. Oh, is it details? Details. Is it just plain old prefabs? It's just plain old prefabs. You can see how we've got silt, silt cloud, and silt small. I think that we want the silt cloud here. So if we drop the silt cloud, okay, so you can barely see it. I think this silt isn't quite aggressive enough for us to count just yet, but it might be that the window is open and the sun's starting to come through it. Let me close those blinds a little bit better. So I can definitely see it, but you can see how faint it is. That's kind of the point, but I believe that what we need to do is scale this up and make it so that it works well at different sizes and stuff like that. So what we're going to do just for starters is create a nice fat version of it, and you can see that when we scale it scales up the cloud as well as the location of the cloud. So that means that the individual particles are now massive. They're like huge. See how big they are? I don't know if you can even see that. It's such a faint little effect. But what we'll do is we'll just see how that feels when we are in play mode. Because in play mode, things are a little bit different than they look in normal mode. Yeah. So you can see that now the fog combined with the silt gives us a much dreamier sort of appearance. And I may decide that this is a little too gray, but the basic idea is there. So you can see that we have these fairly obvious silt clouds, and they're distinct. They're like, okay, there's definitely a silt-like particle right here, but as we get close, they fade away, and that's due to the soft particle effect on them, which means that I'm willing to accept it. I may change some of the details. I may shrink those particles to be a little bit smaller, for example, and then make more of them since it's covering so much space. But the basic idea is that each individual particle is fine. I don't know why Unity is behaving so badly these days. It takes forever to pause and play and all that stuff. There's been an update. Maybe I'll have to go get it. Either way, what we're going to do is we're going to take this start size, bring it down to 0.2, and then we'll change the emission rate to maybe 250. And make sure it's pre-warmed. Sounds right. And we'll just take a look at how this feels. I think 0.2 might be small enough that the particles are inside of the surface where I am now. I might use like multiple setups or something. 0.2 seems too small, I think. And also the color is wrong. I think we need a brighter yellower color. Let's go ahead and do those changes. So we'll take it from 0.2 up to maybe 0.5. Come on, stop being weird. No. I don't know why everything is misbehaving all of a sudden, but whatever. So what we've got is this color over lifetime, which just brings it to white. We've also got this color here, which is also white, which means that the dust cloud is the problem. And you can see we're using the dust cloud dark. We should really be using the dust cloud light, this one. So we'll just drop this in instead. That'll give us brighter effects. Oh, So you can see that that is substantially brighter. That's far too bright, to be exact. So we're going to want to change the nature of this a little bit more. We want it to be kind of a yellowish, dark yellowish color. In addition, this particle shader is a flat particle shader in that it is just a... I'm thinking what's happening is because I have this selected, it's doing something weird. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this to fill the space a little bit better. We're using the default alpha blended particle shaders. If we wanted to, we could create our own custom particle shaders that would allow us to get that wibble wobble. And that wibble wobble would be a nice thing to have. It would give us a nice kind of watery wobble to these particles. But we can always do that later. There's no big hurry on that. The only reason I mention it is because this start color is something that is a little bit difficult to pass into the shader. I know how to do it, but I have to remember how to do it. I have to go look it up. Either way, we'll darken it down by making it a yellowy gray. And you can see that it's still very, very bright. I thought it was darker than that. Mifaz says that the new update is even slower. I wish they would stop screwing up their primary product. That's the only reason I like Unity. Everything else about Unity, the company, the business practices, the shop, I don't like. I like Unity itself, and they keep making it worse. Alright, so that's about right. That might be a little bit dark, but the basic idea is there. So that is about proper, and I wanted to do this just to make sure that the effects I'm using for the fog would feel correct when we have some silt added in. And the answer is yes, they feel fine. The silt might need some polishing, but there's no reason to polish it right now, since the particle system needs to be integrated with the level, and the level doesn't exist yet. It's just blocked in using open zones, and that's not what it's going to be in the long run. What we're going to do next is we're going to turn this box into a machine, but in order to do that, we're going to need some new machine part textures, and a new mesh. Let's start with the machine part textures, just because it happens that we can put them onto some of our existing machine parts. These. I think that it's slow because I have the silt cloud selected and it keeps trying to re-simulate the silt cloud. So I think if I select something else, it'll probably be a little bit better. But anyhow, let's turn off the lighting so that we can see it. And you can see that what I'm currently using for a machine texture is literally just a help texture from one of the scripts that I have installed, one of the libraries I have installed. What we're going to do is we're going to create our own, and it's not going to look like that. Instead, what we're going to want is something that is a flat gray. So let's go ahead and delete this and turn it into a flat gray. And then we're going to want to put in some, maybe a little bit lighter than that. Then we're going to want to put in some mechanical sort of feel. And for that, we're just going to go ahead and create some arbitrary box-like shapes and use some filling and some deleting to make it feel a little bit better. Sorry, I'm looking over at the screen to make sure that the stream is still functioning. It took like 30 seconds to start, and I was a little bit worried that that was going to be I was worried that that was going to mean that the stream was in a poor quality, but it looks like it's okay. It looks like whatever was causing that problem isn't causing that problem anymore, which is good. So basically, we're just going to keep doing this exact thing, but we don't want it to be on the square the whole time. So we're going to go ahead and cut some off-center bits like this. So once again, we'll put in a little bit of dark, and then we'll shrink it down. And then we'll put in a little bit of light. And we're going to want to straighten that back out. We're going to want to actually grab this whole sector. And then we're going to cut and paste, and paste and paste and paste. And then that'll just allow us to quickly create the sort of ratchety feel. But I think what I want to do is ratchet it off like this. I think that'll look best. Ah, the cops are coming. Oh, not quite right. There we are. And now this is just a very, very basic sort of pattern where we're not actually trying to make it look like something specific or be anything specific. But I think we're going to want to add in some really aggressive vertical bars over here for no particular reason. Aubrey says, "Hello, what are you doing, Birdbrain?" I'm just creating a texture for the machinery. It's another temporary texture, but a better temporary texture. Because the machinery texture we've got right now is actually just like a tutorial it's like someone took a screenshot of how their library's settings were supposed to work, and I'm using it as a texture, and obviously that's not right. So I know, Aubrey, I was just having fun with it. So the other thing that we're going to want to do with this is create some circular elements, which we'll just do using ellipses, and we'll just do the exact same thing that we did everywhere else by doing a fill, followed by a shrink, followed by another fill. That's probably a little too bright, but that's fine. And then we'll just duplicate it and make a stripe. There we go, something like that. Just a very basic setup that we can use for our machinery sort of thing. But this isn't quite how we want our machinery to be. There's a couple of things missing from this. One of the things missing is the fact that we are going to want to put in a brushed metal background. I think we'll just use this flame. It looks a little bit like brushed metal when you just do this, and that's all we're going to do. Try and get it a little bit more horizontal. There we are. Good enough. And we're also going to want to put in some text. So we'll go down here, we'll select some pitch black text and put in whatever we want here. So we'll say aquatic machines, copyright 2062. I don't know. It doesn't really matter what they are. We can change it later. And then we'll just say plug, 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 plug. It's just gibberish. The point is to have some text in there. We'll change the text later. For now, that's all we need to do. So we'll save that. And we'll pop on over into Unity and just replace the texture with that new texture. So here's this. There we are. The anchor visual, we're using mounting material A. And all we're just going to do is swap out this albedo with the one we just created. Didn't I save it here? Am I blind? I am blind. There it is. So if we change it over, unfortunately, it's very hard to zoom in close enough to see what's up here. So you can see that the difference here is non-existent. Did it not change? It did not change. Fuck you. There we are. So you can see that the difference here is that it's a much brighter effect. It's a very, very bright texture in comparison to the black we were using earlier. But that's not a big deal. We can simply set the albedo to be a darker albedo. In addition, we can just take this texture we just created. There it is. Duplicate it. Make it a normal map. Create it from a grayscale like this. Apply. And call that the machine bracket normal. And then when we come back out to this material, we can drop that into our normal map and get ourselves some nice texture to it. And we'll just reduce the depth because it was a little bit sharp. And you can see that the actual offset is kind of random and arbitrary, and that's just because we didn't bother to do it very carefully. So we'll just reset some of this stuff and realign these values until it feels a little bit right. Now the machine in the background is using a very temporary texture. We're mostly just paying attention to this unit. You can see how it's off-center. It's got these things that are going the wrong direction. That's because when we created the object, I believe it's this guy here, we just did a smart unwrap, a smart UV unwrap, without caring where the stuff was going to fall. And we've got all these straight brackets here. And those straight brackets are on the diagonal bracket part of this texture. See that? So that means that regardless of what we do, it's always going to have that diagonal feel. But we can always offset it. Not X, Y, my bad. To something more like this, where it should be a little bit more in line with what we want. But we can do anything we want with it. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. The only problem is that we're using this emission mask here, and now the emission is nowhere near being in the right spot. I don't even know where it is. I guess it's not on the object. There are places on the object where there's no matching UV element. So that might be what's happening there. It's okay. It's fine as is. For now, we can always change it again later. I'm going to go ahead and punch the normal map back up a little bit. There we are. So that was what we were going to do just for that one, just for kicks. And then over here on this one, we're going to do the same thing. This uses mounting material C, and we're just going to switch it out as well. Thank you for opening up this huge, huge set of things that nobody wants to ever look at. There we are. So if we come down here, machine bracket, and machine bracket. And again, that's far too much. And once more, we're going to want to have this albedo be darker. We'll probably want to steal the exact albedo, so let's go ahead and do that. Here's the anchor visual from standard A, copy. And then we'll come down here and paste. There we are. So that they'll match up. And you can see that this one has a very different sort of set of parameters. But it's the same setup. It's the same basic idea. So we'll just reset these values and once again try to put everything into a place where it sort of works. That should be fine for now. We can always change it up later. If we change the X tiling, or the X offset perhaps? Oh, this is tiling. That's why it was looking weird. Let's try that again without doing the tiling. I wasn't trying to do the tiling, I was trying to do the offset. There we are. That's more like what I had thought it would look like. We'll deal with it more in detail later. I just wanted to sort of get it working in the basic idea here. So with that in mind, we now have a sort of texture. We got a problem with this rope where I apparently didn't line it up properly. It happens. You can see how far off center it actually is. So we're going to want to move the rope. There we are. Now there's no more problems with that. All right. So what we need to do now is replace this box with a set of machines. And we're just going to create a modular machine element for plugging cables in. Should be pretty basic. So here is our cables file. Just move this back out of the way here. And this. And we're going to create some new stuff here. So we don't want it to be round, but at the same time we don't want it to not be round. It makes sense for these things to be round-ish, but we want to have it feel like it is square despite that. That sounds weird. You'll be able to see what I mean, I think. So basically we're going to come up with a mounting element And it's going to come from the ground. So this is going to be the anchor for our setup. Everything is making so much noise in my place now that it's finally... I don't need any more heat right now. What the heck? I don't need any more wind right now. There we are. I turned off some of that stuff, so hopefully you can hear me now. I was having a hard time hearing myself. Anyway, we're going to have to come up with a footprint for the elements that are going to be up here. And to do that, we're just going to duplicate this core element, move it up so that it's, what is that, 1 meter? Yeah, 1 meter above the ground. And then we're going to make it shape like we want it to be shaped. And that's going to involve cutting away most of this because we don't need all of these segments. So we're just going to delete and delete. There we go. And then we can simply add in a mirror modifier. Looks like I caught some stuff, some flack. It's okay. We can always rebuild it. No biggie. Just put in the clipping and then extrude, and there it is. Good as new. I guess we'll want to fill in this here, so I'll just extrude over. And then we can just clear. It looks like I don't have that favorited, so we'll have to do it manually. Vertex, merge verts by distance. Let's favorite that. There we are. There we go. So what that does is it just makes the box exactly like we want it to be, and then what we can do is bevel this side to create this sort of visual we want to have. And then if we bevel here, we can get it circular, but we don't actually want it to be circular. What we'd probably want it to be is a little bit less tall. Don't know. Either way, we're going to need to create some new elements here. So let's add in another plane. Shrink it down. Bring it across. There we go. Extrude it straight up. And then we'll just bevel 3 of those edges. And we have it. Looks a little bit big, so let's select the whole shebang and scale it. There we have it. And that'll be okay, but I think that this is too heavy for a simple mounting surface. So we're going to bring it down by 1/2 meter. There we are. And then what we'll do is we'll have this rectangular surface, sorry, this non-rectangular surface, a slightly off rectangular surface. I think that what we actually want is a really non-circular cube. I think we want it to be more rectangular than this. So what we'll do is we'll simply move it. Oh, clipping turned back on. There we go. I think we'll have to recreate it. Let's go ahead and just recreate it. No biggie. Just move it up. Come on. And I guess we do have to fill this area, so we'll go ahead and do that. And I want to make it... There we are. More like this, and then bring this down like this, and then bevel here like this. And we can bring this in like that. That's more like what I want for the mounting element. I think it feels a little bit nicer. Let's just scale these down a little bit further. Looks like we're doing this wrong. No, that's even wronger. There we are. Doesn't matter at the moment though. That should do okay. The thing that we're going to want to do with this is add in a lot of elements that create detail, like plants and stuff, but this is just a mounting surface for that sort of detail. It doesn't actually contain that detail. So we'll just smart UV project it. We don't care how it looks at the moment. And then what we'll do is we'll duplicate it. There we are. We've done a shallow duplication specifically so that we can edit it. So this guy, we're going to name them. Name them machine mount. Move it down. And then this one comes down. And we'll name this mount our machine layer A. And we'll just create a couple of layers, right? The layers don't have these, so we'll delete them. And they just do have this shape, but this shape isn't actually the thing we're going to be using. What we're going to want to have here is a beveled cut like this. And then we can just delete those interiors. And we're going to want to close this face off, which I guess the easiest way would be to extrude along the x-axis and then close. There we are. And then what we'll do is we'll allow a plug set to get put into this space. If we take one of these plug sets over, we can make sure that they fit. So just rotate on the x-axis, and you can see that it is a little too tall. So we're going to need to make this a little taller than that. Normally I like to keep my stuff close to a grid if possible, so we're going to make it 0.75 meters high, which means it's got like 0.7 meters between the layers. If we wanted to, we could simply extrude these down or pull these down so that they are a little bit less flabby. But here's the thing, this fellow over here needs to also be able to fit. So if we take a look, it's the same height. Yeah. As long as we never rotate it, that'll fit fine. So we're fine. We can go ahead and shrink these down quite a bit. Nope. I think that's probably fine. Let's just double check. Yeah, that's fine. Loads of space. And we'll just put in some bracket mounts. So the idea here is that we'll just repeat what we did down here, but with a slightly different set of priorities. Basic stuff, not very complicated at all. Don't want the clipping on, so we'll just move it, and extrude on up. There we are. And basically, we'll just put a couple of these in various spots where it seems like they'll make sense. So here would be pretty good. And then if we move this guy away, we can get a sense of where the center is for this. So we'll duplicate them and move them in. And then maybe here will be pretty good. And that'll give us a sort of frame that will allow these to be plugged in and feel correct. But in order for them to really feel like they're mounting into place, I think we're going to need to create a set of back elements. So we're going to just use this face grabber to duplicate this face here, turn the clipping back on, and then we're going to want to shrink it on the x-axis and pull it up. Now, we have a lot of options as to the best way to make it seem like there is an interior there, but the actual best way is to simply make that box black, which we'll handle later, I think. It's not a big deal at the moment. And again, this is going to be something that benefits from some detailing. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in some fun little detail elements just so it doesn't appear quite so empty. The first thing we're going to do is scale this. No, you are doing it wrong. There we are. Turn clipping off and bring it out. Nope. I got the axes backwards in my head, which isn't helping very much. Just extrude that. Bring this down. There we go. And then we will bevel like that. And then we're going to want to create a little bit of a bevel here. And lastly, a nice fat screw. Turn clipping off. Do 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 do. It's nowhere near being centered, so we'll just go ahead and move it around until it's a little bit closer to what we want. It does not have to be anywhere near perfect. And then what we'll do is bevel. I know you're shocked to hear that. We can go ahead and extrude and create a little bit of a head here. I think the best way to do that is going to be to cut rather than extrude. And we'll just extrude now, scale on everything but the x-axis, create ourselves a nice little head, and then we can select this edge and bevel it. And that'll give us a nice set of soft elements there. It's a little bit flabby in terms of it having lots of spare faces that we don't really need, but I'm not too concerned about that. I do think I want to bevel this face. There we are. That's good enough. So the reason I did that is so that if I duplicate it and move it up, you can see how it stacks in a way where it has some mounting brackets. Now I think that I want another basic idea. This isn't actually what I want for the whole thing, but I think this will do for starters. So, I have to UV unwrap it. To be honest, I probably will go with something that's got more of a star shape or a plus shape. We'll see later on. We'll figure it out. Either way, this cube is going to get replaced. Let's go ahead and pull in the machine mount. There it is. Obviously, it's at the wrong scale and in the wrong location, but that's fine. We can fix it. You can see how tiny this is in comparison to what you might think we need. There are a lot of options for if we want this to have a different sort of feel. But for now, I think maybe I will simply scale it up. Not ideal, but just for testing's sake, I think that's probably fine. We're going to want to take this box collider out and add in a mesh collider. There we go. And we'll go ahead and make that a convex mesh collider just for the sake of ease of use. I am a little concerned about how the cables might interact with it if we're not careful, but that's okay. So then we'll put cube inside of cube, and cube 1 will have this mounting. Nope, that's not it. This mount here. And we'll just move it on up. There we go. And you can see that this is radically oversized in comparison to what you might want. If we shrink it back down to the correct scale, you can see how tiny it is. So what I think I want to do is create an oversized version of our basic mount. So we'll go ahead and duplicate this, and we'll move it off to the side. And we will call this machine mount oversize. And the basic idea here is we're going to take everything that's below the mounting element. There we are. So I'm going to change this over to 3D cursor. That's the one. And then we're going to select this and this. And I think what we're going to want to do is move this up to there. There we go. And then if we scale this up on everything but the z-axis, you can see how it scales away from the core cursor. That's not exactly what we want to do for everything, but it is what we want to do for this. So we'll scale that up by a factor of 2. And then here, what we're going to do is we're going to move it manually so that it feels correct. We're going to put in a cut. And then we're going to put in a cut. We'll move the bottom cuts out. And you can see that this creates quite a skewed set of legs. They're really pretty thin and narrow as they go up. We have a couple of options. One option is that we can simply delete these legs and try again, which is what I'm going to do, because I think that a flat set of legs would be a better choice. So turn off clipping, duplicate one of these, kabloom, scale it down. Oh, we're scaling to the center again. Let's bring that down to median element. There we are. And then we can just scale it down on a specific axis. And there we are. Bring this up. There we have it. And what that'll do is it'll allow us to create a flat mounting surface. I can't see it very well at the moment, so let's move this up. There we go. And we can move this away too. And because we have so much of a mounting surface here, we're going to make this flat element actually on the outside rather than on the underside. There have been a lot of cop cars today. So we'll just extrude straight up here, like so. And then we can extrude straight up again and then shrink to create that sort of similar shape. And we'll have that shape be one of the iconic shapes that we get out of our machine mounting brackets here. And then we'll just repeat the process here. And then what we can do is grab this, punch it out, select it, add in a modifier for solidifying it, create it at a thickness of our choice. I think that looks about right. And then we can delete the mirror modifier, apply the solidify modifier, and push it back in. There we have it. And then all we have to do to finish this thing off is to move up. And there we are. Because it was kind of in the surface, and I didn't really want that to be the case. And then we'll do the same thing here. There we go. Now, for creating the screw, I think that we can probably just steal this screw. There's not a big need to keep creating new objects. Duplicate it, punch it out. Hello? What happened to it? Didn't it? Well, it seems to be there. I can't seem to select it. God, I wish the cops would stop going by. I'm just going to merge it in here. And then we're going to go in here and rotate -90 and move it into place. You can see it's quite small, so we'll just scale it up. There we have it. Now we'll duplicate it, rotate it 90. Oh, rotate it 180. There we are. And bring it down. Good enough. So with this kind of mount, we can see we've got plenty of flab on this side, so we'll just bring that side in a little bit. And this will be a nice heavy mount for our setup. Obviously, we're going to have to UV unwrap it again. There we go. Save it. Head on back, and we'll change out this lower mount for a properly scaled standard size mount. There we are. Oversized, but scaled to 1:1:1. You know what I mean. And then this is going to be our machine layer, which is just going to be standard size now. And we're going to have to change out the mesh collider for the same standard size. And down here, this mesh collider needs to be swapped out for the oversize. There we go. And if this seems like it is too small, that's just because I had arbitrarily placed things before. Now that they're not going to be so arbitrarily placed, I think it's probably going to be okay. I can always add more layers or change exactly what the layers are. I'm not too concerned. Duplicate. Duplicate. Copy. Paste. I don't know why it stopped allowing me to duplicate stuff, but whatever. There we go. Now we are currently using mounting material A, And that's not what we want. We're going to need to have a machine bracket or machine mount, which is just going to be popped on to our new buddies. And the machine mount material has a different sort of... oh, that didn't work at all, did it? Interesting. Okay, well, 2 out of 3. Huh. Whatever. Anyway, we can change this to be a little bit different. And one of the things we're going to probably want to do is set this up to have more tiling. Because these are supposed to be, you know, mounting brackets. But similarly, we're going to want them to have some darkness. They're going to be a lot darker than the basic parts, so that they don't draw attention away from the basic parts. No, that's 11. That's not what I want. There, that should be okay. Let's try it. So with that in mind, we can grab our start bank and move it into position. And my computer is grinding away like this is a big deal. I guess it's because it's continuously recalculating all of the ropes. And you can see that it's not centered, so we're going to want to just try and center it a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be less shitty. Which is basically how game dev is done. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be less shitty. So this other local start bank is going to have the exact same sort of setup. Just put it into the second layer. Now the idea is that later on I might create more customized machines where it's clear that one of the layers goes, you know, left, right, and the other layer clearly goes up, down, or, you know, forward, backward. But for now I think this is going to be fine to just set it up like this. The only problem is that it's nowhere near centered. There we go. Now the reason I did that is because we actually have another set of ropes, and I think I want them to share the same height. So we can just add in more ropes now, right? Sorry, I'm sort of thinking about where these things are. Okay, so that's the other mount. That's fine. So we can just duplicate this local start bank if Unity will let us. Hey, Unity, are you fucking letting me do shit? Why are you so finicky today? Did they change what the duplicate button is? I used it earlier, so why is it not working now? Duplicate. Fucking duplicate. Right-click, duplicate. Okay, fine. And then we'll just bring it out. But the idea is that this side is actually going to have 2 ropes. So what we're going to need to do there is duplicate the rope inside. There, okay. I don't know. Maybe I was hitting the wrong button before. 0.25, I think that's right. Or is it a little bit too small? No, it's correct. So then what we've got is a local start bank containing 2 of these cables, which we can simply move into position. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure that these are the cables we want. First off, are they a little bit too high? No, they're fine. I think we might want the other kind of rope. So let's delete this guy. Go into the prefab level bits and give ourselves a rope C. Why are you putting it in weird places all the time? Alright, so that's going to be rope C. That's not the rope I wanted, though. So delete that. Rope B. And try and put it in the place that I let it go. Why does it keep putting it in the wrong spot? I do not understand what Unity is doing these days. And you can see that this is the cable rope, right? The cable ropes are substantially shorter in terms of the amount of space they take up. So that means that I can put in 2 of these people. And I think that might be a better choice than having any of the rope A's. Having 2 of these rope B's stacked up vertically might be best. You planning on letting me? Something went wrong? You decided that wasn't... Okay, that was weird. Not sure why there was like a 45-second pause there. I think that's right. It's a little bit wrong. Let's go ahead and manually... Hello? It's one of those situations where it's not going to let me do a vertex snap until I move it so that I can move it. Good enough. And you can see that this is still using the old material set, so we're going to want to switch out that material for one that uses a better setup. So if we go in, we should be able to edit this material to use some textures. There we go. Obviously, it's still very, very bright, so we'll just darken it up a little bit, bring this down a little bit, and move around our stuff until it seems like it's a good, a good setup. In this case, it looks like it's 90 degrees off half the time. That's what you get when you just kind of do it without thinking too much about it. You get random garbage all the time. For now, I'm just kind of taking a look and seeing, I think we're going to want to try the y-axis. I think we'll just leave it like that. It's not actually how I want it to look, but it's not so terrible that it makes my eyes bleed. We'll work on it later. Obviously, we're probably going to put on more details. Previously, I was using an emissions material, which I still technically am. But what I might do instead is actually add on glowing buttons that are separate, which will just be, like emissive 8 vertex patches. So now we've got these 2 cables, and they kind of just go nowhere because they haven't been moved around at all. It's not a big deal to make them go somewhere specific. So what we're going to want to do is set them up to go where the player is going to want to go. And that means that we're going to want to have one of them go over there, and one of them go over here. So obviously having them come out of this side and then wrap around to that side means that they're going to have to cross over our existing set of cables. And I think that's going to be fun. It's going to add some nice texture to that particular set of cables. So we're going to move it up out of the dirt. Now there we have it, and I think that we're going to have to, we're going to have to tell this to unpack, and doop, because we need to have it create a collision handle for us. Oh, it does not realize there's any collisions. There actually might not be. Oh no, there's not. Just because of the way we happened to create this, it doesn't happen to hit any collisions, which I guess would be fine, except for we actually do need a collider. So I'm going to just make one. There we go. Move this back up. That's scaling. I want to stop scaling. There we go. And now for the other handle, right here. We're going to want to actually bring it over to give us a lot better forced pushover across this set of cables. There we are. And the only other problem is that we still dip below at this one point over here. And our 2 options are to create a handle or to maneuver the rope. I think another handle would be a good choice for us. Because it would allow us to create a better sort of flow. So we'll just move the handle on up the hill like this. And if we take a look, this is a little bit high, a little bit tall, so we'll just lower that a little bit. And then this over here is very tall, so we're going to bring that down considerably. There we go. So there we have our first cable, and the other cable needs to go over in a sweeping pattern, so we're going to do the same thing. So let's drag it on over, doop, and once it goes underground, we'll unpack it and then tell it to create some handles for us, because that way we can just continue to move this around. Where's the first handle? Oh. Oh, it's running into the other rope. That's what it's detecting. That's fine. That does mean that when we try and create another set of handles, it's probably going to create too many. That's fine. We'll just do it now. And that should be the right number of handles for everything we need. So this should go here. That was scaling. I really wish I could disable the scaling bar on this. I guess I should just switch over to moving, even though I do occasionally need to rotate. I think moving would be a little bit better. So it looks like we're having an issue here where it is completely malfunctioning, and I'm not sure why. Oh, okay. That was surprise. Anyway, we're going to grab the second handle, which is actually this handle, and we're going to move it over to here. And then we're going to grab the third handle and bring it here. And then we're going to take the stop and bring it here. And that should work. For reasons unknown to me, the rope seems to be malfunctioning. You can see how it's kind of just scooting off to the side and then exploding. There is some kind of issue where it doesn't work as expected. In this case, I think the answer might be to switch which of them is on top. So, that didn't work. That was... it didn't seem to help much. Let's go ahead and move the start bank down. For some reason, this top rope is malfunctioning, but it shouldn't be. Alright, well, there's something wrong with this rope. I don't even see the pattern that normally gets created. Like, if you look, you can see the kind of little lattice of dots for the ropes, but I don't see that in this case. Presumably there's a nan problem. We're getting a nan at some point for some reason, and that's what's happening here. I don't really know why that would be, but I'm thinking I'll just delete the rope. And then we'll duplicate rope B. Unity, thank you. And then we'll move it up. There we have it. And you can see that this second rope is going off to the side. What we're actually going to want to do there is make it go a little bit of a different direction, or rather go a lot of a bit of a different direction. So we're just going to grab the whole shebang, look down on it from above, and move everything here. And we can just rotate the whole thing. It's rotating in the wrong area there. So we're going to rotate around the center instead, because we're trying to rotate. There we have it. We're not trying to rotate each pivot. We're trying to rotate the whole set of pivots. And there we go. So that's more like what we want it to be like, except for, of course, we need these handles to course along in this direction. So I'm trying to figure out why this seems to be what's causing our errors. If you see, it's like popping off to the side, and then there's no other ball connecting to it. So it must be some kind of NAN-related error, but I can't imagine why. Yeah, see, NAN. I guess what we'll do is we'll try and pull it back until it stops being NANs. At some point, it will be small enough that we won't have to worry about it. And I can always just have two ropes attached to each other. My guess is that it doesn't like trying to spawn so close to another rope. My guess is that it's malfunctioning right at the front there. So what we can do is we can grab this handle and we can tell it to move up and in. No, it's not working. What happens if we move the entire rope brace? Yeah, I can tell it's NAN. I just don't know why it's NAN. It shouldn't be NAN. So I'm going to move this up. And it's still nanning. Don't know. I'll go ahead and just delete this rope. This rope would be fine. We don't need both of them, I guess. This rope needs to be quick-gen again due to a problem with the mesh collider. That's fine. It automatically resolves itself. And we'll just use the other category of rope. So if we move this rope up a notch, we can actually lock all of these. And then when we move this rope up, it won't slide all of them up. And then we can just use a rope A. Could you put it in the local start bank? In the local start bank? In the local start bank? Fuck you. I don't know why it insists on putting it inside of an object I'm clearly not indicating it to be put inside of. Well, we'll try with this rope. Maybe we'll have an easier time with this particular rope. So if we grab the stop point here, I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop trying to be clever, and we're just going to have it be two ropes. So if we grab this stop point, let me just do this. There we are. And then we'll just drop another rope A inside of the stop. Actually, we could probably make it... Let's go ahead and make it a rope B. Yeah. So if we make it a rope B, we can have it come out of the side, right? I think that'll look okay. Or we could rotate it. Oh, but we can't rotate it. Okay, so bring it back. We could rotate this guy. That'll do it. So you can see that this is giving us some Z fighting. That's not a big deal. We'll just go ahead and tell it to not give us Z fighting. You can see how they are precisely the same size, which is why we're getting an issue here. But if we can ever manage to actually grab the part of this ball that is directly in front of the mouse, rather than the part that is randomly way behind the mouse, we might be able to actually get some stuff done. There we are. That's not what I would consider a perfect setup, but at the very least, it doesn't feel too bad. And then with this, we should be able to have this continue on its way over to there. So more or less. We'll probably have to add in another handle, in which case we might as well do it now. Unpack. Peter Nerlich came in. Hello. And then we can tell it to create some collision handles for us. And bring the stop back up, because it shouldn't be underground. And then we will grab, there we are, and grab that handle that we just created and move it this way. And that'll give us a little bit of a coil. And of course, this is all open space right now. There's nothing here, so it seems like these are just kind of being arbitrarily coiled around. But in my mind, I'm thinking about what they're going to do with when I put in rocks and pathways and boulders and stuff. So just in case you're wondering why the heck I'm doing what I'm doing, that's why. Here you can see that this little rope we've got isn't overlapping properly. So we're going to go grab it and make it overlap properly. I believe it's this guy. Yeah, there it is. Oh, it's locked. I'll unlock it. There we are. Yeah, perfect. Werbis also came in. Hello, Werbis. And Peter Nerlich says it looks fun. Well, let's actually hit play and see how it actually looks. You can see that I've damaged this rope. It's not supposed to drop below the ground. I must have moved it at some point, and I didn't have the anchors locked. That's fine. We'll pull it back out of the ground soon enough. To be honest, even if it's in the ground, that's okay, as long as being in the ground is accompanied with some kind of, sandy thing, so it's clear it's going into the dirt. Peter Nerlich says he has no idea how to approach that problem. Not sure which problem he's talking about, because I've had so many. So you can see that this machine now looks like a machine, but there are no real lights on it, and I think I'm going to want to add some blinking lights and some decorations of that sort. That can wait, though. And over here we've got this giant mass of cables, right? And the idea is that this is the way forward, whereas this is something that we're supposed to get immediately, something that's local. And the quest pop-ups will tell us that. So when we're chasing this down, we're going to have a laser pointed at this rather than down those fat pipes. And you can see that this feels not too bad in terms of how the rope moves, how the cable moves. There's obviously nothing on the end right now, but the basic idea is not too shabby. And if we come on down into here, Yeah, the rope thing. So I actually spent about 3 weeks on it because Obi Rope has a really obnoxious miss feature. So I had to program my own. So this is all programmed from scratch, which is why it took me 3 weeks. It actually only took me about 6 hours, but since I only work on this for a few hours a week, you know how it is. So here what we've got is this cable, wraps around the side, turns into this cable, and comes out along this path here. And all of this open space is not going to be open space. It's only open space because I haven't done anything with it yet. Similarly, over here, this is actually going to be some kind of closed-off area because it's the backtrack point where you come back to at the very end. Yeah, so I think this is probably okay in terms of how the rope is starting to come together. Let's go ahead and decorate this place. Let's go ahead and put in some stops and some gaps and some stuff like that. The basic idea is that this central area, this hub, is broken and busted. I'm using temporary textures and temporary material, temporary meshes and stuff, but this has been abandoned. There's something wrong with the underwater hab. And so all of this stuff is actually the science kit that keeps this facility, that's the reason this facility exists. So you're chasing down bits of science that explain what they saw before they all vanished. That is the basic idea. And here's the problem. The handle is a little bit too low, so we'll just pop it up a little bit. And there we have it, fine as can be. For spraying down some stuff, what we're going to want to do is save. Exciting. And then we're going to want to create ourselves a specific object for containing all of our first room debris. So if you take a look here, we've got a room 3, but we don't have a room 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a room 1. So create an empty object, call it room 1. And this is going to contain our mesh sprayer. So here's our mesh sprayer, and you can see that it's been turned off, which is no big deal. Just drop it into room 1 here and turn it on. Boom. So if we take a look at the mesh sprayer, it's over in the wrong spot, but that's no big. Just drag it over into the right spot. Zoop. So you can sort of see that it has a target region, and we can make this target region however we want it to be in terms of size and shape. So we can just scale it down and move it to the side a little bit and then bring it up so that it's not actually chopping off any of our cables here. Once we've got it to more or less where we want it to be, we can just take a look at sheetrock A, B, C and make sure that these have the sheetrock materials, because if they don't have the sheetrock materials, we'll be in trouble. And we also want them to have mesh colliders. Make sure they all have mesh colliders. Yeah, good. And so with that in mind, we can now spray some meshes. We've got 7 of them being sprayed, and it looks like they're going to be fairly small. Let's just find out. Was there a button to do that? Or do I have to hit populate? I guess I have to hit populate. Okay, so it looks like it didn't work. For some reason, they didn't go far enough. My guess is that I used a static maximum length. So my guess is that it was just too far from the ground. Yeah. So you can see that that drops some rocks. Problem is that these rocks are nowhere near being the right size for what we actually want them to do. So we're going to go ahead and delete them. And we'll change the scale of the rocks by just editing these keys, making this 20, making this 10. There we are. That'll be a little bit bigger. Shaboom. And so what we've got is a giant lump of random rock crap. No big deal to move these rocks around. We'll just change them from pivot to center and from local to global so that we'll have an easier time of it, and we can just move them into place. Now the rock sprayer can be polished up in a number of ways. This particular rock is kind of a fun one just because it's it's got kind of a slant to it, which kind of makes it feel like the rope can go underneath it like this, see? And it'll feel like the rope is wrapped around it. And I think that's going to be a really good, you know, sort of sensation. Yeah, that's more or less how I want it to feel. We'll just move one of these to kind of support this region a little bit better. Now we have a problem, and that is that we have no easy way to actually imply that these rocks exist. Right now they just kind of jut up out of the sand, and there's no kind of indication that the sand knows they exist or anything like that. We can go in and sculpt in some patterns to try and make it feel like there is, you know, waves across the sand. But for now, we're going to leave it like this. We'll come back and do that shit later. So if we come in at this point, we should be able to see what this feels like, and it should be pretty basic. It shouldn't be anything complicated. Just move the player so that we don't have to go the whole way ourselves. Yeah. So you can see that even without any plants or anything of the sort, you can sort of get a feeling that these rocks exist. Now the sand pattern is just the worst for this. The sand pattern kind of implies that there's lots of extra space here. We're going to want to switch that out for a sand pattern that makes sense. So that's not a big deal. We'll just select the terrain object in 15 or 20 minutes when this finishes unplaying. Thank you. And we'll just go over to the painter and paint texture, and this one. The texture is, I mean, the brush is very tiny at the moment. Super tiny brush. There we are. That's a nicer brush. And we'll just pick something that's got a little bit of texture to it and kind of just block it in so that it doesn't feel like this sand area is windswept, because it's not windswept. The whole point is that this area has something in it, so there's no real wind sweeping across it anymore. The other thing we could do, and I guess I'll show you how to do it and make sure I remember how to do it, we can change this to raise or lower terrain, bring it down to a brush size of 1, give it a nice strong element here, and we can just choose which direction we think that these ripples are being created in. Is it being blown from that edge to this edge? Yes, it is. So what we can do is we can create a sand up on this side. Oh, it's much, much too strong. It's a little bit too weak. And we can create a sand down on this side to give it a little bit of the correct sort of feel. Maybe 1 is a little too small. There we have it. A little bit too much. That's fine though. So with that in mind, that should be a little bit more realistic feeling than the wind-swept sand that we had before. This is before we actually put in any plants. Speaking of plants, previously we were using a very, very simple particle system for a lot of our plants. I could switch that out for the new rope system, but I think the particle system is probably a better choice. So let's go ahead and put in some plants. There are 2 categories of plants that we'll be using. We'll be using the tall plants that go up to the surface, you know, the frondy plants. And then we'll also be using the small plants, the little surface growth plants. Both of them have the same basic setup. We'll be using the flat planter to create them. And you can see the flat planter has 2 particle systems in it. And if we take a look at this flat planter, it has 0 positions in it because it's not currently being used. So if we were to bring it and then we can just sort of make it point in the correct direction. This is a, bring that down. This is going to be allowing us to spray plants. So we can just go, and you can see that there are now plants. And of course, this can go into any sort of combination we would like. It's not something that is limited to exactly where we are at the moment. So we can do it however we want. Let's increase this max angle a little bit and get it a little closer and try and get some stuff in the cracks. All right, so let's just go ahead and see how that looks. Now I'm sort of just grabbing a flat planter from somewhere. I don't even know which particle systems it's set up with. It looks like it's set up with tubular grass and tubular whatever that is. That's not a big deal. We can switch it out to whatever we want it to be. I just want to play around with it some and make sure that it feels not too shabby. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's a little bit strange because these things do not actually grow on the sand. These orange ones, they're not sand. They're barnacles, so they would grow on actual rocky surfaces. So seeing them on the sand is very stupid. But we can always switch it out later. It's no big deal. As a fact, we could probably just go ahead and remove one of them right now, and if we just figure out which of them is the so that's the coral mix, and this is the other coral mix. This one is coral mix 01 mesh, which is that. So it's that one that we don't want. So if we just remove that one, or add in this one as the only particle system, and hit play, it should now all be grass. Yeah, see? So that's the sort of thing we can do no problem. We might add in like different kinds or sizes of grass and stuff like that. It should be pretty straightforward for us to be able to do this, but we do have to evolve the tool set we're going to be using. One of the other things that we need to do is create a custom. We still got a little bit of chop on the turns. Not sure why that is. We're going to want to create some more silt. So to create some silt for our room here, we'll just take the silt that we created for the entire area and put it into the room and resize it until it is the right size for the room. Actually, I think it would be better if it were I can't see the plane. I can only see the fuzz, so it's a little bit hard for me to tell exactly where these things should be, but I think that this will do okay. Now we're going to bring the size back up to 1, and we'll just drop the emission rate down to 100, and that should give us some fairly nice fuzz. Yeah, so you can see how there's definitely a region, and that's one of the tricks we'll be using, is we'll be creating regions out of silt. When there's a gap between silty regions, it's basically the same as having a wall, but it's just a visual wall. Now obviously this is still not a completed region. I just put in a little bit of rocks so that it feels okay. What we're going to want to do is add in some mission mechanics and some stuff like that, but I think we're going to probably want to stop here. I actually want to do voice recording on another subject, and if I talk anymore I won't be able to. So if you have any questions, tell me now. Otherwise, we will see you again next week. I'm going to take a screenshot of this lump of rocks, and then we'll call it a day. trying to figure out the best sort of angle to try and get this from. And I guess that's okay. No, I can't see the... so many decisions. That's fine. Peter Nerlich, Mifa says, do you plan on increasing the density of the fog? So I can do anything I want with the fog, and I'm not sure if you say fog, I'm not sure if you mean the fog or the silt. In both cases, the answer is I can do whatever I want with it. I can make it denser, I can make it less dense. It's super easy to handle. If you mean the fog, then that's the effect you see over there. That's the fog. And that's pretty easy for us to change if we go over into the camera. We're currently using this quad. We might not use the quad in the long run, but it uses this system here where we can change the color, the saturation, the brightness of the fog. So for example, we can make it black. And we can also change the depth of the fog. So if we lower, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Of course, we can also change the min depth so that it gets thicker, closer to us. Either way, all of that stuff is completely customizable, so I can do whatever we need to do with it. It's something that should be pretty easy. I'm even going to change it on the fly. There's already a setup over here in the other room. If we were to wait for Unity to stop playing in 15 or 20 minutes. There we go. There's a setup over here in the third room, this thing. There's some boxes right here that you can't see because for some reason they're invisible until you click on them. But there's a pair of boxes here that are just bounding areas. And as you go through them, they change the fog parameters. So that's the sort of thing we'll be doing a lot of. The fog is super cheap, so abusing it as much as possible is a priority. Mifaz says that we want to decrease how far we can see. Ha ha ha. Peter Nerlich says, can you condense to a few sentences how the rope laying works? Is it an iterative algorithm working with fake gravity and colliders? Sure. I mean, if you want the details, you can go back and watch the older live streams of me developing it. They're not available on Twitch anymore because Twitch has the memory of the goldfish, but they are on my YouTube channel. The basic idea is that these red beams are the actual path of the rope, and they go from handle to handle. When you start to actually lay the rope using the algorithm, I just walk along these red beams and place one of these gray balls once a meter. And then I iteratively go through and I move all of the gray balls according to a couple of basic things. First is gravity. So I move them down by a certain amount. If we actually click on the rope, you can see the gravity is 0.2. The next thing I do is I make sure that they move relative to their previous ball in the chain. That's what gets you the sinusoidal sort of motion, this sort of wobbling. This is when they move relative to the previous ball in the chain, which gives you, that's the wobbliness factor here. And then the other thing they do is they check for collisions, and they move to avoid the collisions. So they check for both a collision between where they were and where they want to be, and they check for a collision between the previous ball in the chain and themselves. And those factors, just with a little bit of weighting, allow you to create these kinds of ropes. Now the ropes I'm creating all have full collider sets. So if we were to go into the rope display, you can see it's using a mesh collider with the rope mesh, which is not cheap. It's really expensive, and I'll probably want to customize that. But that allows me to have ropes that coil on top of each other, like these, because they do collide with each other. There are some times it doesn't quite work. You still get some cuts like this. But by and large, that helps to create the ropes having a sense of existence. There are a lot of tutorials on how to do it. You can watch my previous streams, or you can just go look up those tutorials, because it's not actually complicated. It's just a few things that have to be polished. Yeah. Oh, and the actual rope model that I'm using here is just a model I created in Blender that runs from, here they are. This is that one. So it runs from 0 to 1 on the z-axis here, or the y-axis, I've forgotten which is which. And then this axis, or this particular location at the top, gets welded to this location at the bottom for every unit in the chain. So that's how those are created. So that means that all of these have their final set glued to their first set over and over and over and over and over. And that creates this kind of sinuous feel. It doesn't work perfectly for complicated meshes though, so because I did it super basic. Hopefully that answers your question, and I'll see you folks on Wednesday. Until then, have fun. After that, you're not allowed to have fun. It has to stop on Wednesday.